So we have Lupe over here, she's our infant. We have Casey over here, and he's how old?
2.5.
2.5. And then you guys have Ella, and she's 4, right? Anybody want to go first? Was this hard?
Maybe, I think, because I feel like it felt too easy.
It felt too easy?
Just like the questions, yeah.
Okay.
So,
There are worse problems to have.
yeah, no, I was like, I don't know, it just feels like we needed more.
Okay, you need more information?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But, so we put as like primary need is like in help with peer engagement. So not just with like the kids in her school, but like with, her stepbrothers at home too.
So remind us, for the other groups that don't have Ella, just give
Um,
us a super fast synopsis of what Ella's deal is.
Mom and dad are divorced. Dad remarried and they have 2 kids together. Well, the stepkids together. And she lives between mom and dad. At mom's house, she has no rules and is perfectly fine. At dad's house, she has rules and she's a little bit destructive and gets frustrated. And they started her in school with more kids, and the teachers notice like the destructive behavior at school too. So that's where the concern is.
Okay,
Just a lot of outbursts and not listening. So.
okay. So what are her strengths? What are the strengths of this family, to start with?
Well, the teachers were the first to say something, to speak up, that they noticed that there was something going on with her. I guess the parents are kind of like, okay, like we'll see what's going on. So they're willing to go through like the steps to find out if there's anything wrong and what they can do to help her.
Okay.
And no family culture is really in the picture. I
Okay.
would say.
So the strengths are that she has teachers that are aware and willing to talk to the family about it, and
And
that
The parents are willing to listen.
both mom and dad are willing?
Yes.
Okay. So both said, yeah, let's take a look at things.
Mm-hmm.
Any other strengths? Okay.
Not really. It isn't really. I mean, she likes to watch TV and play by herself. Like, I don't know how that.
Okay.
It's about as much as we got from all that.
Okay. And then what is the primary need for Ella?
Just help engaging with her peers, like having, like if somebody confronts her with something, the first step is not to just like freak out and be destructive. So
Okay.
she needs help. Yeah, addressing it and working through those, the confrontation that she's having.
Okay. Okay. And you don't feel there's any cultural piece that. Okay. All right. Thank you. How about Casey over here? Casey? Whew. Casey's a tough case.
Yes.
So let's start with strengths.
Okay. Strengths are, he will pull adults by the hand to kind of lead you what he wants and what he needs, which is good.
Mm-hmm.
He's not verbal. He doesn't communicate. He's really observant with other kids, so that means he's looking around on what's going on around him. He enjoys time with grandma and grandpa. He's potty trained. He likes to play with marbles, trains, and puzzles. He works well with his interventionist. And then,
So what's the need for this kiddo?
for the daycare people to want to be more involved and kind of do their research on how they can work with him and help him, hit some milestones or something, because they're like refusing to sit down with the parents and the interventionist.
Okay.
So that's a red flag right there for me.
So the parents are willing, but when the interventionist is at school, the teachers literally use
They're like,
that time
"We're
to
going
like
on break."
go on a break while
Yeah.
the interventionist is like, ooh, an extra body, peace out. So definitely some challenge there.
Yes.
Okay. So the need for the family is to get the school on board.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, because I guess from what I was reading, they're gonna turn his IFSP into an IEP to get him into public school. So I feel like if the daycare is not helping him, then how is that transition gonna help once he's into public school and with more kids?
Yes. Yeah, most definitely. Is there a cultural piece for Casey?
Yes. Grandparents are very involved and help parents, and he has a interventionist that also works with him at home.
Okay. But is there any other piece about their culture? Do the parents feel that the behavior is just part of their culture, or okay? No, it doesn't mention anything.
No.
Okay. Any other thoughts on Casey?
I wouldn't have my child at that daycare.
Okay.
If they, if they needed help, and I think that's harsh. You're taking your child somewhere and they're not helping you out and you're asking for help. That's
Okay.
hard.
I think with Casey, because when he goes around with Grandpa, he doesn't have many expectations and rules. So he feels like he's a little more free to do what he wants. But when he goes to school and he's with mom and dad, he has more expectations and rules, and it stresses him out.
Okay. So of course he enjoys hanging out with Grandma and Grandpa, right? So similar, when he's with mom kind of doesn't have any rules and no problems, right? Because she's just allowed to do whatever she wants, Miss Ella.
Yeah.
So that definitely can be a piece, right?
Yes.
Very common generationally, with different age generations. Sometimes they're either overly strict or under strict, kind of too lapsed about things. That can be a challenge. Okay? Perfect, Rose, thank you for that. All right, and how about Miss Lupe?
Her strength are she will sleep up to 10 to 12 hours whole night.
How
She-
old is Lupe?
9 months old.
Okay.
She loved to play peekaboo game, and she plays with her older siblings at home. She enjoys playing with her sibling. And if she is upset, they can. If she is held, she got okay, and and if she is upset, her mom or her grandma will take her to a drive to make her calm. Her need is she need to be connected with her mom. Her mom said that she is not connected with her child,
Okay.
so she may need more connection with her parents, mom, and her grandma.
That's a big statement if mom doesn't feel connected to her baby, right?
So she is crying all day long. If she is held, she get calmed down, or else she is crying all day long.
Okay. So what's the primary need? What do they need? Connection, you said.
Yeah.
Anything else?
And there should be smooth transitions. She is not able to switch to solid foods. She had a hard meal time.
Okay.
Um,
So there's some feeding issues.
yeah.
She's not able to eat baby food. Is there any cultural piece in here? What are the cultural needs of this family?
Actually, her mom is a divorcee,
Okay.
so she might need support from some friends or external family members.
Okay.
She had a grandma, but she is sick, so she is not able to take care of her granddaughter.
Okay.
That was it, really.
Okay. All right. So why is it important to really look at those strengths first? Why Why is it
so that we
important?
can find out some solution for the things.
Yeah, we gotta know what works well for this family, right? Because when we know what works well, we can build upon it. It's often why in these vignettes you'll see little tidbits about they like to play with trains and cars, or she enjoys watching TV and playing by herself, right? Because we want to know what works well for this child and this family so we can build upon it. And we can use those as rewards. We can use those to our advantage. It's why it's really important to know, what is the child like, right? If we need to have a reward for a behavior and we want them to do something that they don't want to do, there has to be something they want to do at the end of it, right? Well, we have to know what that is. If we have a 2-year-old that's working with an interventionist and she needs him to do something that he doesn't want to do, she's going to reward him with something. She gives him a train and he doesn't care about trains. That's not going to be as meaningful as if she gives him a, I don't know, Peppa Pig sticker and he's obsessed with Peppa Pig, right? So we want to know those things, those little pieces, and we want to be able to build on those strengths. Every family has strengths. Every child has strengths. We just have to dig a little harder for some than we do for others. So I know when I asked you guys about Casey and said, what are their strengths? You're like, nothing's working for this child. But there are some things we just got to dig a little harder. But it also, I think, is a good point because we get emotional about these things. You're like, what the heck? What is wrong with these teachers that they don't care about this child and want to help them, right? So just as we get emotional about it, so do families. Families are perhaps overwhelmed, especially if you've got a 9-month-old maybe that's not sleeping or doesn't sleep at all and cries all day. You can imagine, just like if you had a baby in your classroom that cried all day, you're spent by the end of the day. You can't think of a single good thing that happened all day, right? Like you're just spent. So oftentimes families come with these emotions and these frustrations, and we gotta dig and really find those strengths so that we can build upon them. And just as we have to be aware of what our emotions and reactions are, we also have to be aware of that for families. So that we can really support this family and come from a supportive place instead of a non-supportive place. Does that make sense? Any questions on this activity? Thank you guys for your hard work. Alright, so let's make the switch and really look at some formal assessments. So when we're talking about doing some formal assessments, we really are talking about doing gathering information from multiple sources and over time. So an assessment is never meant to be done once and never done again. That's not very helpful. Anytime we're talking about assessing something, we need to be comparing apples to apples and oranges to oranges. And in order to assess if something is working, if something is not working, if something has improved, we have to reassess. And you can't use a different test to reassess, or you're comparing apples and oranges again. So it's over time, multiple sources, really used for gathering information. Consider and select the appropriate tools, so we're going to talk about some tools. And evaluation team members, so asking the appropriate people to do the assessments. A person who has never met a child and doesn't have a relationship with a child, that child is going to perform differently for a stranger than they are for someone they know, right? That makes sense. Explaining assessment purposes, procedures, and possible outcomes is important so that we understand what is the purpose. How is this assessment supposed to be given? And then what do we hope to get out of it? We need to tailor the participation from the caregivers to match the needs and desires of the children and families. We also need to frequently check for understanding. Sometimes what we see is that we see somebody giving an assessment and they'll ask a family. So it might be an assessment on the family, and they'll ask a question and nobody understands it. And they don't want to admit they don't understand it. And so asking for that, checking for understanding. And then omitting questions that are developmentally irrelevant or culturally inappropriate. Sometimes assessments ask questions that just aren't relevant to that family, or that might be inappropriate or insensitive to a family's culture. And so it is okay to then not ask those questions and omit them and adjust the score accordingly. So, there are some considerations to make in selecting and implementing assessment tools. One of the things is that it needs to be repeatable. Is it an assessment you can do over and over again? Is it easy to use and easy to score? Because we all know that if it's not easy to use and easy to score, we're not going to do it. Is it inexpensive? Because we don't have the money to be paying for really, really expensive assessments, or we wouldn't use them. We don't have that kind of budget in early childhood. Is it reliable and valid? And is it capable of telling programs when there is a need for intervention, what the intervention is that's needed, and whether intervention is even making a difference? So in order to know if it's making a difference, it has to be repeatable, right? It has to be easy to use so that you're going to redo it, and easy to score, and then we have to be able to compare those scores. So the format of formal assessments, it can be things like checklists. It could be frequency counts. Does anyone know what frequency counts mean?
How often those how often is this happening?
Yeah. How often is it occurring? It might just be that you have a piece of paper and you're marking how many times that child says no in a 10-minute period. Or how many times that child makes eye contact in a 10-minute period. Or how many times that child has a conflict in a set period. So it's just counting frequency. Because oftentimes what we hear from teachers is, oh my God, it happens all the time. It's constant. And then when we do frequency counts, we actually discover it's not constant. It just feels that way, right? Because it's overwhelming. It could be rating scales. It could be interviews, such as a routine-based interview. There are some assessments that are interviews. They're harder to score. And it could be play-based assessments. There's one called a transdisciplinary play-based assessment. So it could be a play-based assessment, which of course then is great because kids don't know they're being assessed. They just feel like they're playing. So, the one that we're going to talk about next is really called, it's called the SEAM. So it's the Social Emotional Assessment and Evaluation Measure. It is a curriculum-based assessment for all children. There are infant, toddler, and preschool versions. There are 2 brief questionnaires. One is for the parent or caregiver to fill out, and one is for professional use only. I'm sorry. One is the child benchmark and assessment for either the parent or caregiver or professional to use. And the other one really is benchmarks for the adult or caregiver. So what is the adult or caregiver doing that's supporting that child? And I have some, I have the handouts on it if you want more information. It also would be on your thumb drive if you have your handouts on your thumb drive, if we provided that, if that was something you wanted. And it is also on the NCPMI website. So this slide really talks about the framework. So we have briefly talked in previous sessions about the ASQ, the Ages and Stages questionnaire. That ASQ is really just a screening tool. It really just says, do we need to look at things further? Is the child on track, or do we really need to make a referral? It's just a screening tool. It's not a full assessment. So if we do the screening tool, if we do the ASQ and discover that we need to look at some things a little bit further, then the next step would be to do a SEAM assessment, that social emotional assessment. So then the idea is that we would do that assessment. We would then use the information from the assessment to do some goal development, right? Because we don't just do the assessment and then leave it at that. then the idea is we use that information to set some goals. And then we provide interventions for those goals. And then we go a couple of different ways. So then we reassess, so we reevaluate and see where that puts us. So it may mean that we reassess and see if things have improved. It may mean that we do the evaluation and go, oh, we missed the mark and we have to go back to goal development. We picked the wrong goal or that goal's not working. Or it may mean that we go back and continue to provide intervention. So it's not a linear process. It kind of depends on what the results are, right? That makes sense? So this is a sample SEAM assessment. And so this is specifically for an infant, and so it gives you some sample questions. Does the baby initiate and respond to communications? And so the options are that's very true, true, somewhat true, not true, and then it gives you an option to mark whether it is an area of concern and whether you want to set a goal for that child. So this family answered that the baby, it's somewhat true that the baby initiates and responds to communication. So sometimes, not always. That's a concern, right? We do want babies to initiate and respond to communication. That's what babies do. So if this baby is not doing that, then that's a concern and certainly something we would want to set a goal around. This is a sample question for a toddler. A toddler lets you know if they need help, attention, or comfort. And I love that it gives examples. So do they raise their arms to be picked up? Do they point and show you what that they need a drink? Your little guy will grab you by the hand. He doesn't speak, but he grabs you by the hand and takes you, right? You do that with a toddler. I have no idea what you're saying. Show me. Just show me, right? So it gives examples of what does that look like. And for this family, they said, no, that's not true at all. He does not have any way to let you know that he needs help, attention, or comfort. Absolutely a concern then. But they chose not to make that a goal for this child. Is it a concern? Sure. There must be bigger concerns, however, that we're going to focus on before we worry about that, right? So we start at the top, we pick the most need for the family, and then pick the goals from there. This is for older children, so 3 to 5. A child shares and takes turns with other children. Give some examples. Not true for this kiddo. Is that a concern? Yep. Does that make sense? Can be a very, very helpful tool. Again, the SEAM is available online. It's available, all you have to do is Google it. So then really reviewing the results. So reviewing the information with the caregivers. So that might be family, that might be teachers, it might be both. Restate the child's strengths and concerns, right? Keep going back to those strengths. Those families need to know there are strengths there. Clarify any discrepancies between the professional's perception and the caregivers. So the nice thing about this tool is the parents fill it out and then the teachers fill it out. And oftentimes there are discrepancies, right? So then we got to talk about that. Why are there discrepancies? Well, because they have peers at school and they don't have peers at home, right? Synthesize the information. So put all of the information together across multiple sources and then really outline the next steps. So determine the level of delay this child has and then summarize the information so that we can move forward to goals and interventions. What are some possible actions? Really gathering information and support. It might mean that the family doesn't have enough outside support. And so then where can we provide resources that they can gather some outside support? It might mean that they just need a peer group. It might mean that we ask the family to take them out into more social settings, take them to the rec center, take them to a play group, that sort of thing. Outside agency referrals for services, supports, and benefits if the family needs it. If the family is struggling with food insecurity and housing insecurity, we can provide outside referrals for that, absolutely. But that would come out in that assessment. Outside agencies reporting for immediate interventions. So if there is an immediate need, we would need to provide that, at least information on those outside agencies. And then involve